Whatever is occupying your hands and your mind right now can wait for a moment, because there are times when continuing forward without stopping is not strength, and there are moments when the wisest thing you can do is become still enough to notice what you have been overlooking. My child, I am speaking to you in this moment because I do not want you moving blindly into what lies ahead. I am not calling your attention because I want you to be frightened, anxious, or suspicious of everything around you. I am calling your attention because I want you to be prepared. Before anything else I say can settle correctly in your heart, you must understand the difference between fear and preparation. Fear tells you that something terrible is coming and that you are powerless to face it. Preparation tells you that something deserves your attention and that wisdom can change the way you meet it. Fear causes you to freeze, imagine the worst, and surrender your peace before anything has even happened. Preparation makes you slow down, look carefully, think clearly, and choose with greater understanding. I am not asking you to spend your days expecting disaster. I am asking you to stop moving through life as though every decision is insignificant simply because its consequences are not immediately visible. Some of the most important turning points in a life do not announce themselves with noise. They appear as ordinary conversations, seemingly harmless habits, invitations that feel routine, decisions that seem too small to matter, and directions that appear reasonable at first glance. Something may look ordinary and still carry weight. Something may feel familiar and still deserve another look. You have become accustomed to moving quickly because life rarely gives you the feeling that there is enough time. One responsibility follows another. One decision replaces the last. You answer, respond, solve, adjust, continue, and sometimes you do all of it without giving yourself enough space to ask where your choices are actually taking you. That is why I am interrupting the rhythm for a moment. I want you awake. I want you present. I want you able to recognize what is happening around you before momentum carries you somewhere you never consciously decided to go. There are choices near you now that may appear small but deserve more attention than you have given them. Perhaps there is a direction you have been leaning toward simply because it seems easier than remaining uncertain. Perhaps there is an agreement you are almost ready to make because you are tired of thinking about it. Perhaps there is a habit you have repeated for so long that you no longer question whether it is still helping you. Perhaps you have become accustomed to saying yes before considering what that yes will require from you later. I am not telling you that every choice is dangerous. I am telling you that awareness matters. You do not need to fear your future when you are willing to walk through it with open eyes. Wisdom often begins with something as simple as refusing to hurry. Slow down before you commit. Look again before you enter. Listen before you answer. Give yourself enough space to recognize what urgency may be trying to hide. Not everything that demands an immediate response deserves one. Not every open door must be entered simply because it opened. Not every opportunity belongs to you merely because it arrived. A second look can reveal what excitement overlooked. A quiet moment can expose what pressure concealed. A question asked before acting can prevent regret that would otherwise arrive afterward. This is why I want you to understand that warning is not punishment. When someone you love is approaching danger they cannot see, love does not remain silent simply to avoid making them uncomfortable. Love speaks while there is still time to adjust. Love warns before the consequences arrive. Love gives someone the opportunity to choose differently. That is what preparation does. It places light where there was uncertainty, so that you do not have to discover everything through pain. Do not interpret caution as condemnation. Do not assume that because you are being asked to reconsider something, you have already failed. You have not. The very reason you are being called to pay attention is because there is still room to choose. There is still room to change direction. There is still room to notice what you might otherwise have missed. You do not need to carry the weight of imagining every possible outcome. You only need to become more intentional about the step directly in front of you. Ask yourself whether you are moving because you truly understand the path or because you are uncomfortable standing still. Ask whether your decision is coming from clarity or from pressure. Ask whether you have examined what you are entering carefully enough to understand what it may require from you later. Many people believe wisdom means knowing everything in advance, but wisdom often means knowing when you do not yet know enough to move. There is strength in waiting long enough for confusion to settle. There is maturity in admitting that something needs another look. You lose nothing valuable by allowing truth time to become clearer. What is sound does not become less sound simply because you examined it carefully. What is right does not need panic to force you toward it. This moment is not about becoming hesitant in everything you do. It is about becoming deliberate. I do not want fear to become the voice that leads you, because fear distorts what it sees. It can turn a small uncertainty into a catastrophe and make you distrust even what is good. That is not the life I am calling you into. I am asking for awareness without panic, caution without suspicion, and attentiveness without anxiety. There is a calm kind of watchfulness that allows you to remain peaceful while still noticing what deserves attention. That is the posture I want you to carry. Keep your eyes open without allowing your heart to become afraid. You are not being told that everything around you is wrong. You are simply being reminded that appearances are not enough to build important decisions upon. Life becomes clearer when you stop allowing speed to make choices that wisdom should make. Give yourself permission to pause. Give yourself permission to reconsider. Give yourself permission to say, I need more time before I move. You do not owe every situation an immediate answer. Sometimes the most important decision is the decision not to rush. There will always be noise encouraging you to move faster, decide sooner, respond immediately, and keep up with everyone around you. But the path meant for you does not require you to abandon wisdom in order to reach it. Your responsibility in this moment is not to predict everything that will happen next. Your responsibility is to remain awake enough to recognize what is being placed before you. Notice what you normally overlook. Question what you normally accept automatically. Pay attention to where your time, energy, and choices are carrying you. Do not drift simply because drifting feels easier than deciding. You are being given the opportunity to move forward consciously, not accidentally. That opportunity itself is a gift. So do not receive these words as a reason to fear tomorrow. Receive them as a reason to enter tomorrow differently. You do not need to walk into what comes next with your heart racing or your mind filled with imagined disasters. Walk with your eyes open. Walk slowly enough to see. Walk calmly enough to think. Walk humbly enough to reconsider when necessary. Preparation is not a sentence spoken over you. It is protection placed before you. And because you are willing to stop, listen, and look again, you are already approaching what lies ahead with more wisdom than you had before this moment began. My child, there is something I need you to understand about the season you have been walking through, because you have judged yourself far more harshly than I ever have. You have looked at your silence and wondered whether it meant your faith had weakened. You have remembered the nights when you wanted to pray but could not find the words, the mornings when you woke already tired, and the moments when even turning your thoughts toward me seemed to require strength you did not have. You wondered whether I noticed how distant you sometimes felt, whether I interpreted your exhaustion as indifference, whether your hesitation disappointed me, or whether you had somehow allowed too much time to pass between us. Hear me clearly. I understood every moment. I knew the difference between a heart that had turned away and a heart that was simply worn down. Your silence was not rejection. Your weakness was not rebellion. Your inability to form the right words did not close my ears to you. I knew how much you were carrying long before you admitted to yourself that it had become too heavy. I saw you continue through your responsibilities when your strength was already depleted. I watched you answer people, solve problems, care for what needed attention, and present a steady face to the world, while something inside you was quietly asking for rest. Others may have seen your ability to keep going and assumed that meant you were fine. I saw what their eyes could not see. I saw the effort behind every ordinary task. I saw how much energy it sometimes required just to get through another day without allowing everything inside you to spill out. There were moments when you appeared calm while your thoughts were racing in directions no one around you knew about. There were nights when your body was exhausted, but your mind continued replaying conversations, decisions, mistakes, possibilities, and questions. You remembered things you wished you had said differently. You wondered whether you had waited too long, acted too soon, trusted too much, or misunderstood something important. You carried questions into the darkness that you never spoke aloud because you were not certain anyone would understand them. I understood them before you could finish forming them. There were prayers that began in your heart and never reached your lips. There were sentences you started inwardly and abandoned halfway through because you did not know how to continue. There were moments when all you could offer was a sigh, a tear, a thought, or a quiet longing for something to change. None of those moments were empty to me. I did not require perfect language in order to hear you. I did not wait for carefully arranged sentences before I paid attention. I heard what lived underneath the words you could not say. I understood the question behind your silence, the fear beneath your hesitation, and the hope that remained hidden beneath your weariness. You sometimes thought you needed stronger faith before you could come close to me, as though uncertainty made you unwelcome. But I never asked you to arrive with everything resolved. I asked you to come honestly. I would rather receive your tired truth than a confident performance that hides what is really happening inside you. You do not need to pretend before me. You do not need to convince me that you are stronger than you feel. I already know the places where your strength has become thin, and knowing them has never caused me to move away from you. It has drawn me nearer. Love does not demand more from a weary heart simply because that heart is struggling to respond. Love knows when someone needs patience. Love knows when silence means pain rather than absence. You feared more than once that you had missed your moment with me. You looked back at opportunities to pray, change, respond, or believe more deeply, and wondered whether you had waited too long. You imagined that perhaps there was a deadline you failed to meet, and that I had moved on because you did not respond quickly enough. But I am not standing over your life, measuring your hesitation with impatience. I knew why you needed time. I knew what had drained you. I knew what disappointments had made you cautious and what unanswered questions had made you uncertain. I was present even when you could not recognize my presence. Some of the seasons you interpreted as abandonment were seasons in which you were being quietly held together. Some of the delays you experienced were not proof that you had been forgotten. Some things simply were not ready, and neither were you. There were paths you could not yet see clearly, answers you were not yet prepared to carry, and moments when slowing down protected you from taking on even more than you were already carrying. You thought silence meant nothing was happening, but silence is not the same as absence. I remained with you through it. I remained when your confidence disappeared. I remained when your prayers became shorter. I remained when doubt sat beside faith and you could not tell which one was louder. I remained when you questioned whether anything you believed was making a difference. You were never required to maintain perfect emotional certainty in order to be loved. There were also forms of loneliness you struggled to explain. You could be surrounded by people and still feel that no one truly saw the person underneath the responsibilities, expectations, and composed expression you carried every day. People knew the version of you that kept things moving. They knew the one who answered when called, handled what needed handling, and continued despite being tired. But you wondered whether anyone knew the deeper part of you that sometimes wanted to stop being strong. I knew that part. I saw the ache that appeared when the day became quiet. I saw the tears you wiped away before anyone could notice. I saw the moments when emotion surprised you because you had held it back for so long that you almost forgot how much was still inside you. Not one of those tears was meaningless. Not one private moment of pain disappeared unseen. You may have cried alone physically, but you were never abandoned in your sorrow. Your pain mattered even when no one else knew it existed. Your questions mattered even when you could not answer them. Your longing mattered even when you tried to convince yourself that you should be stronger. I know you completely, not only the version of you that succeeds, serves, believes, and perseveres, but also the version that becomes tired, confused, disappointed, uncertain, and afraid. Nothing you have discovered about your own weakness has surprised me. Nothing hidden inside you makes me turn my face away. You are not loved because you managed every season perfectly. You are loved in the middle of the unfinished places as well. So release the fear that your exhaustion separated you from me. Release the belief that every silent season was evidence of spiritual failure. Stop punishing yourself for the days when survival was the most you could manage. You are here now, listening again, and that matters. Your heart has not disappeared beneath everything it has carried. It is still capable of turning toward me, even gently, even slowly, even with questions remaining. You do not have to force yourself into a dramatic response. You do not have to prove anything in this moment. Simply recognize that you have been seen all along. The prayers you thought were incomplete reached me. The tears you thought were private were known. The nights you thought you endured alone were witnessed. The silence you feared had created distance never caused me to abandon you. I was closer than you realized, patient while you rested, present while you questioned, and faithful while you found your way through a season that demanded more from you than most people ever understood. You have never needed perfect words for me to hear your heart, and you do not need them now. My child, now that you understand that I have been near you even in your silence, I want you to begin looking at your life with clearer eyes, because comfort is not the end of what I am giving you. I also want to give you wisdom. There are situations around you that cannot be understood by listening only to what people say or by accepting everything exactly as it appears on the surface. Some truths reveal themselves slowly. Some patterns become visible only when you stop rushing past them. Some decisions that seem harmless at first can eventually lead you away from the peace you have been trying so hard to protect. That is why I am asking you to pay attention, not with suspicion, not with fear, and not with the expectation that everyone around you intends to harm you, but with discernment. Discernment is the ability to notice what is consistent, what is changing, what feels unsettled, and what deserves more examination before you give it your trust. There may be people in your life whose words sound reassuring while their actions repeatedly leave you confused. There may be someone whose intentions are not openly harmful, yet their behavior carries a lack of care that slowly drains your peace. Perhaps you have noticed small moments that made you uncomfortable, but you quickly dismissed them because you did not want to seem overly sensitive. Perhaps you have explained away repeated disappointments because you wanted to believe the best. Perhaps you have told yourself that what happened was insignificant, even though something inside you continued returning to it. I am not telling you to accuse anyone without reason. I am telling you to stop ignoring patterns simply because facing them may require a difficult decision. Words can be spoken in a moment, but actions reveal what a person repeatedly chooses. Watch what continues over time. Watch whether promises are followed by responsibility. Watch whether care is present when there is nothing to gain. Watch whether you are respected when you disagree, whether your peace is honored, and whether you constantly have to become smaller in order to keep a connection comfortable. You do not need to decide everything immediately, but you do need to become honest about what you are seeing. There is strength in observation. There is wisdom in allowing time to reveal what emotion can sometimes hide. You have often responded to uncertainty by moving quickly, hoping that if you act fast enough, the situation will somehow resolve itself. At times, you have accepted an answer simply because having any answer felt easier than remaining in uncertainty. But moving quickly does not always create clarity. Sometimes it only carries confusion farther down the road. I want you to develop a different response. When something feels uncertain, pause. When pressure rises, do not automatically obey it. When you feel pushed toward an immediate decision, Ask yourself why there seems to be no room to think. Reflection is not weakness. It is one of the ways you protect yourself from consequences that could have been avoided. A thoughtful pause gives you time to separate what is true from what you merely hope is true. It allows excitement to settle, fear to quiet down, and reality to become easier to recognize. What is truly right for your life will not become wrong simply because you took enough time to examine it carefully. You do not have to rush into a future that has not yet become clear. There is also a decision you have been carrying in your mind for some time. It may involve your work, a relationship, or a direction you have quietly considered. You have looked at it from different angles, yet something inside you has not fully settled. Do not treat that lack of peace as an inconvenience you must silence. Pay attention to it. There is a difference between the normal discomfort that comes with growth and the deeper unrest that continues warning you that something is not aligned. You will learn that difference by becoming more honest with yourself. Ask whether the path in front of you strengthens your peace even while it challenges you, or whether it repeatedly leaves you confused, diminished, pressured, or disconnected from who you know you are. Difficulty alone does not mean a path is wrong, and ease alone does not mean it is right. What matters is the deeper pattern beneath the circumstances. Some right choices require courage, but beneath the fear, there is still a quiet sense of integrity. Some wrong choices look convenient, but beneath the convenience there is a discomfort that grows the longer you ignore it. Learn to recognize that difference. You are also being invited to set healthier limits around what you allow into your life. Boundaries are not punishment. They are not an announcement that you no longer care about people. They are a way of protecting what has value. Your time has value. Your attention has value. Your emotional energy has value. Your peace has value. You would not place something precious where it could be repeatedly damaged and then call that generosity. In the same way, you do not have to give unlimited access to every person, every demand, every conflict, and every expectation. You can care about someone without allowing their instability to control your inner life. You can remain kind without constantly surrendering your own well-being. You can listen without accepting every burden as your responsibility. You can say no without becoming cruel. You can step back without becoming cold. Healthy boundaries do not require anger. Sometimes they are simply quiet decisions about what you will no longer participate in. There are places where you have been adjusting yourself too much, trying to fit into environments that do not honor who you are. You have sometimes believed that maintaining peace meant keeping everyone else comfortable, even if doing so cost you your own peace. But constantly shrinking yourself is not peace. Constantly explaining your worth is not peace. Constantly recovering from the same pattern is not peace. I want you to recognize when something is asking too much from the deepest parts of you without giving anything life-giving in return. Awareness allows you to make changes before resentment builds and before exhaustion becomes your normal condition. The same principle applies to your habits. Not every important turning point comes through a major relationship or life-changing decision. Your direction is also being shaped by what you repeat every day. A habit may appear insignificant because each individual moment seems small, but repetition turns small choices into a path. What you repeatedly allow into your mind affects how you think. What you repeatedly give your attention to influences what you value. What you repeatedly postpone eventually shapes what remains unfinished. What you repeatedly tolerate becomes easier to accept. Look closely at the ordinary rhythm of your days. Ask yourself whether your habits are carrying you toward greater clarity or quietly deepening confusion. Real change often begins long before anyone else notices it, in small decisions made consistently when no one is watching. You do not need to transform everything at once. You only need to become more conscious of what you are repeating. This entire season is teaching you to trust clarity more than impulse. You do not need to force answers before they are ready. You do not need to confuse urgency with importance. You do not need to assume that maintaining every connection is proof of loyalty. You do not need to ignore discomfort simply because acknowledging it might require change. Instead, become still enough to observe, patient enough to notice patterns, and courageous enough to honor what becomes clear. I am not asking you to withdraw from life or close yourself off from people. I am asking you to move through your life awake. Let wisdom stand beside compassion. Let patience stand beside hope. Let discernment stand beside trust. You can remain open-hearted without being careless. You can believe the best about people while still paying attention to what they consistently show you. You can move toward your future without rushing into decisions simply because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. The more you practice this kind of awareness, the steadier you will become. You will begin to recognize that protecting your peace is not selfish, that thoughtful decisions are not fearful, and that boundaries are not rejection. They are part of learning how to live with greater truth. Look beneath the surface. Give truth enough time to reveal itself. Pay attention to what repeatedly brings peace and what repeatedly leaves confusion behind. Let your decisions come from clarity rather than pressure, and allow the small choices you make every day to begin shaping a path that is wiser, steadier, and more aligned with the life you are being called to live. My child, there comes a point after a long season of carrying more than you thought you could bear when you begin to wonder whether relief will ever become more than something you imagine from a distance. I know you have reached that place more than once. You have prayed for change, waited for answers, stretched what you had, and continued moving even when your strength felt thinner than anyone around you realized. There were moments when you looked at what was available to you and wondered how it could possibly be enough for everything standing in front of you. There were needs that seemed larger than your resources, responsibilities that did not shrink simply because you were tired, and pressures that followed you into days when you desperately wanted to feel free from them. But I want you to understand that what you see in your hands right now is not the full measure of what is possible. Your present limitations do not define the boundaries of what I can provide. What appears insufficient to you is not insufficient to me. What looks delayed is not forgotten. What feels unfinished is not abandoned. I have seen the places where scarcity has shaped the way you think, where you have learned to expect that there will never quite be enough, and where you have carried the fear of falling behind no matter how carefully you manage what you have. That kind of pressure does more than affect what is around you. It can settle into the heart until even moments of peace feel temporary. You begin preparing for the next problem before the current one has passed. You hesitate to enjoy something good because you are already wondering how long it will last. You hold tightly to what remains because experience has taught you how quickly circumstances can change. I understand why you have lived this way, but I do not want scarcity to become the permanent language of your heart. I want you to begin making room for another possibility, that what has been difficult for a long time can begin to change, that what has remained limited can be multiplied, and that the season ahead does not have to look exactly like the season behind you. I am not asking you to deny reality or pretend that needs do not exist. I am asking you not to measure my ability by the size of what you currently possess. There was a time when a few loaves and a small number of fish looked incapable of meeting the hunger of a crowd, yet what appeared too little became more than enough when placed in my hands. The lesson was never that small things are worthless. The lesson was that small things should not be despised simply because they look inadequate at the beginning. You have small beginnings in your life right now that you may be tempted to dismiss. A small amount of strength returning, a small opportunity to breathe, a small improvement in something that has been difficult, a small reason to hope again. Do not ignore these beginnings because they do not yet look dramatic. Growth often enters quietly. Provision sometimes begins as something so ordinary that you could miss it if you are only watching for a miracle that arrives with noise. Let yourself recognize the first signs of relief without demanding that everything be completed at once. I am capable of increasing what seems limited and I am capable of bringing enough into places where you have lived with the constant expectation of lack. But provision is not the only thing I want to restore. I also see how tired you are, not the kind of tiredness that disappears after one good night of sleep, but the deeper weariness that comes from being responsible for too much for too long. You have become accustomed to functioning while exhausted. You have learned how to keep moving when your mind is crowded, when your heart is heavy, and when your body is asking for rest. Sometimes you have even felt guilty when you slowed down, as though resting meant you were neglecting something important. But rest is not a betrayal of your responsibilities. You were never created to live permanently at the edge of your strength. I do not want you measuring your worth by how much discomfort you can endure without stopping. There is a kind of rest I want you to receive that reaches beyond sleep. It is the ability to experience a quiet moment without immediately filling it with worry. It is the ability to breathe without mentally rehearsing everything that might go wrong. It is the freedom to enjoy something good without feeling that you must apologize for it. You are allowed to experience peace. You are allowed to smile without expecting sorrow to interrupt you. You are allowed to receive a moment of joy without asking whether you have suffered enough to deserve it. The difficult years have trained you to remain alert, but you do not have to turn survival into your permanent identity. I am restoring more than circumstances. I am healing the way you carry them. There are wounds inside you that formed through disappointment, waiting, unanswered questions, and repeated pressure. Some of them changed the way you think about the future. You became cautious with hope because hope had disappointed you before. You began expecting less so that disappointment would hurt less. You learned to protect yourself by refusing to imagine what could become better. But I am renewing your mind so that yesterday's limitations do not become tomorrow's assumptions. I do not want you dragging old chains into a new season simply because they have become familiar. I want you lighter, steadier, and able to move without carrying every previous failure as evidence that nothing can change. What you endured taught you endurance, but endurance was never meant to become endless suffering. There is a time to sow through tears, and there is also a time to gather what was planted with patience. Nothing faithful you did in the hidden years was wasted. The prayers you offered when you were exhausted were not wasted. The small acts of obedience no one applauded were not wasted. The moments when you chose to continue believing, even though you had very little evidence in front of you, were not wasted. You may have assumed that because you could not immediately see results, nothing was growing. But not all growth is visible while it is happening. Seeds spend part of their life beneath the surface. Roots form before fruit appears. What looked like silence did not erase what had been planted. I remember every act of faithfulness that felt unnoticed. I remember the sacrifices that no one understood. I remember how often you continued even while asking whether continuing mattered. Now I want you to become willing to receive as well as endure. Some people become so practiced at surviving that receiving feels unfamiliar. When relief finally arrives, they do not know how to trust it. When something good enters their life, they remain tense, waiting for it to disappear. Do not let that become your response. When peace comes, receive it. When something becomes easier, do not create new burdens simply because struggle feels more familiar. When you are given room to rest, rest without guilt. When joy appears, do not interrogate it until it disappears. Every quiet smile, every moment when your chest no longer feels tight, every ordinary day that carries less pressure than the one before it can become part of your restoration. You do not have to wait for everything to be perfect before recognizing that healing has begun. I am rebuilding your strength little by little so that you can move forward without being controlled by the exhaustion of the past. I am renewing the parts of you that became discouraged and teaching your heart that it is safe to hope again. What I am bringing is not merely enough to get you through one difficult moment. I want to uproot the belief that your entire life must always be defined by barely having enough strength, enough peace, enough resources, or enough hope. What feels small in your hands can become sufficient. What feels wounded can become stronger. What feels empty can be replenished. What feels tired can learn to rest. And what you once believed was permanently lost can begin to be restored in ways you did not know how to expect. You have carried the weight long enough to know what hardship feels like. Now allow yourself to learn what renewal feels like too. My child, what I am doing in your life now will not remain hidden inside your heart alone, because there are seasons when inner change must eventually become visible in the world around you. You have already been learning to see differently, think differently, and carry yourself differently, and now the structure of your life is beginning to respond to what has been formed within you. Some relationships will change, some opportunities will appear, some places that once seemed permanently closed will begin to open. Some connections you thought would always remain close may gradually move away, while people you have not yet met may enter your life with a purpose you could not have arranged for yourself. Do not assume that every change means something has gone wrong. Sometimes rearrangement is necessary because the life you are entering cannot be built entirely from the patterns of the life you are leaving. I am bringing people closer who will not require you to diminish yourself in order to remain accepted. They will not make you question your worth every time you speak honestly. They will not constantly take from your strength while offering nothing that helps you grow. Some will encourage what has been developing quietly inside you. Some will recognize qualities in you that others overlooked because they only knew you through an older version of yourself. Some will arrive with wisdom, support, opportunity, or companionship at moments when you could not have predicted needing them. Their presence will not be random. You may look back later and realize that certain encounters happened at exactly the right time, after you had grown enough to recognize what those relationships were meant to bring into your life. At the same time, do not be surprised if some connections begin to loosen. You have spent too long carrying the weight of relationships that continually left you exhausted, uncertain, or smaller than you truly are. You sometimes remained because history convinced you that leaving any connection behind meant you had failed. You believed that if you were more patient, more understanding, more accommodating, or more willing to carry the burden, everything might eventually become what you hoped it could be. But not every relationship is meant to accompany you into every season. Some people belong to a chapter, not the entire story. Their departure does not erase what the relationship once meant, and it does not require you to turn gratitude into bitterness. You can honor what was good and still recognize when something has completed its purpose. What I remove from your path is not always taken because it was entirely bad. Sometimes it simply cannot travel where you are going next. You are being released from the exhausting need to keep proving your worth to people who decided long ago to see you through a limited lens. You have carried words spoken over you that were never true. You remembered criticisms long after the person who spoke them had forgotten. You allowed another person's disappointment, rejection, or misunderstanding to become evidence against your own value. There were moments when you entered rooms already expecting to be overlooked because you had grown accustomed to being treated that way elsewhere. There were opportunities you hesitated to pursue because part of you still believed you were not the kind of person who belonged in them. But those old definitions are beginning to lose their authority. I formed you with purpose before anyone had the opportunity to judge you. Your value did not begin when someone recognized it, and it does not disappear when someone fails to see it. I am restoring your understanding of who you are so that you no longer need the approval of every person around you to stand securely in your own life. As that understanding grows, you will carry yourself differently. You will speak with greater steadiness. You will stop apologizing for taking up the space you were meant to occupy. You will recognize opportunities that once would have intimidated you because you are no longer approaching them from the same place of uncertainty. This is part of why previous seasons sometimes felt so quiet. You looked around and assumed nothing was happening because you could not see immediate movement, but much of what mattered was being prepared beneath the surface. Foundations were being laid where you could not observe them. Your patience was being strengthened. Your understanding was being deepened. Your motives were being clarified. You were learning what you could live without, what truly mattered, and what kind of life you no longer wanted to build. What felt like delay was not empty time. It was preparation for something that required a stronger foundation than you possessed before. If everything you wanted had arrived immediately, you might have entered it with the same fears, habits, and need for approval that once controlled so many of your decisions. Now you are approaching what comes next with a different capacity. That is why some of what was hidden can begin to appear. What once confused you will gradually become easier to understand. You will look back at certain closed doors and recognize that their refusal redirected you. You will look at losses you once considered meaningless and see that they forced you to discover strengths you would otherwise have left unused. You will begin to recognize connections between experiences that once seemed completely unrelated. Not every question will be answered at once, but enough understanding will come for you to take the next step without needing to see the entire road. I will guide you one step at a time. You do not have to possess the complete map before you begin moving. There are doors ahead that you never seriously imagined opening because you learned to organize your expectations around what had previously been possible. You became careful with dreams. You trained yourself not to expect too much because disappointment seemed easier to manage when hope remained small. But the limits of your past are not instructions for your future. Places that once seemed inaccessible can become part of your path. Opportunities that did not fit the person you used to be may fit the person you are becoming. Gifts within you that seemed dormant can begin to awaken because the right environment, the right responsibility, or the right connection finally gives them room to emerge. Ideas may come with new clarity. Abilities you once treated as ordinary may become useful in ways you never expected. You may find yourself trusted with things you did not chase, not because you demanded recognition, but because faithfulness prepared you to carry what comes with it. Do not confuse this new visibility with a command to prove yourself. You do not need to force doors open or manufacture recognition. What belongs in this season will not require you to become someone false in order to receive it. Walk through what opens with humility and allow what remains closed to stay closed without believing every closed door is a judgment against you. I am doing a new thing, and new things often require you to stop staring continuously at what has ended. If your eyes remain fixed on what was lost, you may fail to notice what is beginning to rise directly in front of you. There are places that have felt like wilderness, areas of your life where progress seemed impossible and nothing appeared to grow. Yet a path can emerge where you previously saw none. What felt dry can become fruitful again. What once existed only as a hope can begin taking recognizable form. And when movement begins, some developments may happen more quickly than you expected after such a long period of waiting. Do not let sudden progress frighten you simply because you became accustomed to delay. There are seasons of preparation, and there are seasons when what was prepared begins to unfold. When that happens, remain grounded. Remember what the quiet years taught you. Remember who you became when no one was applauding. Let new opportunities expand your life without allowing them to redefine your worth. Let new relationships bless you without making them the source of your identity. Let recognition find you without becoming something you must constantly chase. You are entering a season in which the outside of your life can begin reflecting the work that has already been taking place within you. Some people will leave, others will arrive, doors will close, others will open, and parts of your story that once looked disconnected will begin to make greater sense. Do not cling so tightly to the shape of the past that you leave no room for what is being formed now. Look ahead with an open heart. What is being rearranged is not meant to erase your story. It is preparing your story to move in a direction you could not have reached while everything remained exactly as it was. My child, as you move forward from everything this season has taught you, I want you to understand that the greatest danger is not always what happens while the pressure is at its strongest. Sometimes the greater danger comes afterward, when the storm begins to lift and you are tempted to return to the same habits, the same patterns, and the same ways of thinking that once left you empty. You have learned too much to go back to living unaware. You have seen how easily your peace can be disturbed when you give too much access to people, situations, and conversations that do not deserve that much influence over your inner life. You have learned that not every thought requires your attention, not every conflict requires your response, and not every person should be given access to everything you carry inside. Guard what you reveal, and become more thoughtful about where your trust lands. There were times in the past when you shared deeply because you believed openness alone was enough to create safety, only to discover that some people did not know how to honor what you gave them. Do not let those experiences make you cold, but let them make you wise. You do not need to close your heart to everyone in order to protect it. You simply need to understand that trust should be placed carefully, gradually, and in spaces where what is vulnerable in you will be treated with care rather than used carelessly later. Pay attention to how you feel around the people and places that surround you. There are moments when your body recognizes tension before your mind has found words to explain it. Some environments allow you to breathe more freely. Others leave you unsettled even when nothing obvious appears wrong. Do not become afraid of every uncomfortable feeling, but do not dismiss every signal either. Learn to remain present long enough to notice what repeatedly brings steadiness and what repeatedly disturbs it. This awareness is not meant to make you suspicious. It is meant to keep you from abandoning your own wisdom simply because someone else appears confident. You have doubted your instincts for too long. There were times when something inside you quietly told you that a situation was not right, but you talked yourself out of listening because you did not want to seem difficult, negative, or uncertain. You continued forward, and later you realized that your first hesitation contained more truth than you allowed yourself to acknowledge. I want you to stop treating your inner awareness as something that must always be overruled. You are learning how to listen more carefully, how to distinguish fear from genuine concern, and how to give yourself permission to pause when something does not feel settled. This kind of attentiveness will become part of your strength. You are not being left to stumble blindly through what comes next. Guidance often arrives gradually. It may come as a sudden moment of clarity, a thought that helps something make sense, or a quiet understanding that directs you away from what no longer belongs in your life. You may not receive every answer at once, and you do not need to. What you need for the next step can become clear when the time for that step arrives. Your responsibility is to remain open, calm, and willing to notice. At the same time, protect your peace more carefully than you have before. You have given too much emotional energy to things that did not deserve it. Small comments stayed in your mind for hours. Minor conflicts followed you into the night. Other people's moods became burdens you felt responsible for carrying. Situations that should have occupied a few minutes of your attention sometimes consumed entire days. You do not have to continue living this way. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not everything deserves an explanation. Not everything deserves the power to change the atmosphere inside you. There is strength in stepping back. There is strength in choosing silence when a response would only deepen confusion. There is strength in deciding that your peace is more valuable than proving a point to someone determined not to understand you. The calmer your mind becomes, the stronger your decisions will become. You will begin to notice that steadiness changes the way you respond to pressure. Things that once immediately unsettled you will no longer have the same power. You will learn to stand still inside yourself before allowing circumstances outside you to determine your direction. This is not passivity, it is maturity. It is the ability to remain grounded long enough to choose rather than react. There is a strength in you that has been developing quietly through everything you have endured. You may not have recognized it while the difficulty was happening because growth often feels like survival when you are still inside the process. But you have become more resilient than you were before. You have survived moments you once believed would break you. You have continued through seasons when you were uncertain of your own strength. One day you will speak about some of these experiences with a steadiness that surprises you. because what once felt unbearable will have become part of the wisdom you carry. Do not underestimate what has been built in you. You are more capable than the fearful version of yourself has allowed you to believe. And yet, I do not want this strength to become hardness. Remain gentle. Remain teachable. Remain willing to listen. The purpose of everything you have learned is not to make you guarded against life, but to help you move through it with greater understanding. Release the fear that you must control every outcome. You are not powerless, but neither are you required to manage everything that may happen. There are choices you can make, boundaries you can keep, thoughts you can refuse to entertain, and directions you can reconsider. Focus on what is actually yours to carry. Fear will try to convince you that you must solve tomorrow before it arrives. Understanding teaches you to make the next wise choice and allow the rest to unfold in time. Carry what you have learned gently. Do not turn every lesson into another burden. You do not need to change every part of your life overnight. Let truth settle into you slowly, the way rain reaches dry soil and gradually softens what has been hardened. Some of what you understand today will become even clearer later. There are still things unfolding that you cannot fully see yet, but you are no longer moving through them with the same blindness you once did. And when this message becomes quiet and the ordinary demands of life return, do not assume my presence disappears with the moment. I remain with you in tomorrow's routine, in the decisions of the coming days, and in the hours when doubt returns and you wonder whether any of this still matters. It does. You are seen when no one is watching. You are held when circumstances feel uncertain. You do not walk into what comes next alone. Let go of the belief that everything depends entirely on your ability to hold it together. You have lived for too long as though loosening your grip would cause everything around you to collapse. Some burdens were never meant to remain entirely in your hands. Release what is too heavy. Let yourself be supported. When tomorrow becomes noisy, resist the temptation to forget everything that became clear in the quiet. Return to what steadied you. Remember that your peace deserves protection, that wisdom deserves time, that fear does not deserve authority, and that your worth does not depend on the approval of those around you. You are standing at the beginning of something, not merely reaching the end of a difficult season. The person who walks forward from here does not have to live exactly as the person who entered this season once lived. Let what you have learned change how you trust, how you choose, how you respond, how you rest, and how you carry what belongs to you. Those closest to you may notice the difference before you ever explain it. They may see greater calm in your voice, greater clarity in your decisions, and greater steadiness in the way you face uncertainty. Let that change continue. Do not return automatically to old patterns simply because they are familiar. Walk forward with open eyes, a guarded peace, a willing heart, and the quiet confidence that you are not facing the road ahead without guidance.